you asked them to come up with a deep fake about you.
Yes.
What did they come up with?
Right. So what I'd asked them during my committee hearing to come up with deep fakes about me, myself as the guinea pig, and they had the opportunity to go and point their AI tools at my LinkedIn account. And from that LinkedIn account, they were able to basically create a tweet that looked just like it came from the local paper, the Star Telegram, same font, same everything, and use photos from the town that I live in to go and say that there was an active shooter alert. And so it looked like an article that was written entirely. And on first blush, people will immediately start sharing it and resharing it, especially something as obviously important as a shooter, an active shooter alert. And by including quotes by myself and by including, the governor and other people in that, it's an easy social media post that can be retweeted or shared amongst a lot of people very quickly. And it will take a while for authorities to know that it's happening and then to be able to go and try and correct that information, because and it could be too late. I mean, sometimes if, let's say, this particular one would be something I think they were saying with only 2 or 3 hours left in the election, which if you've ever been at an election polling location, that's some of the busiest times. Yeah. And so they did that. So they have tweets. They did one video. I figured out what industry I was in, which is private equity. So they do a video of it's me, okay, and I got a hoodie on in an elevator, okay, and I'm like looking around, all suspicious, and it has this New York Times thing saying that I had done something wrong at this private equity company, and again, it goes out there, and people will share it and reshare it, and it's just the tool is able to do it quicker and more accurately appearing than before. We all used to see those things with typos and generic talk, but now it knows so much about you, and it can sound like you, it can make something look like you. In my committee hearing, I have 4 other members, and so I had gone online and I had found video of them. And so like one particular, Jeff Leach, it was he had won, so it was victory speech. I just took his victory speech right off of YouTube. I trained it off of 11 labs, and I created his voice model. And when I was first introducing everyone to the committee hearing, I said, hey, members, any questions? And I had pre-recorded the AI's manipulation. And I didn't even say what the script was. I had asked the AI to look at his webpage and say what he might say at the opening of it. And it just sounds exactly like him, exactly like him. And I did that for each of the members that were on the committee. And you think like, okay, why would you need a tool that sounds just like us, right? What is the value there, right? If I want it, I should be able to do it for myself.
Yeah. When they did that deep fake that you just mentioned with you, how long did it take them to produce that?
Instantaneously. Like they have a tool and they just hit drop down, like, do you want this person, what do you want? And they just selected, active shooter alert. They go and they select what kind of manipulation you want, a drop down, and then you just showed that, and then they just showed which LinkedIn page to go to, and it was right there during the thing. It takes no time, maybe 5 or 10 seconds, and no cost.
When the heads of some of these agencies came into the hearing and sort of shared where they are, what jumped out to you?
So we have this advisory council, and when we had first filed the bill, I filed the bill and worked on it starting 2 years ago, right? So the legislature's a little slow, so we had done it 2 years prior, and that was before ChatGPT even was the thing. So I think my expectations when I first filed the bill was that let's see what the agencies are going to work on. But one of the things that's interesting is that they have already been obviously using AI, and most people at home have been using AI for a very long time. So when we got our inventory list, we noticed that there was almost 700 different use cases already in state government that are using artificial intelligence. Now, most of them are focused on security, cybersecurity. We're being attacked all the time here in Texas, whether it's people trying to disseminate malware or to breach and get confidential information. And so we've been using AI tools for quite a while to go and protect us automatically from these attacks. But we're using it a lot for more mundane, practical, boring stuff related to our business processes. So I'll give you an example. So TxDOT, for instance, does a lot of invoicing, tens of thousands of invoices to pay contractors. It used to take about 3 weeks, very manual, to go and look at the contracts to do the invoicing. Well, now it takes about 27 seconds to go through an invoice. So it's a massive savings in time, and it's efficient. And the folks who are doing that could be working on something else. So some really impressive things.
So when you're talking about in terms of saving time, how much are we talking?
Well, it's one of those things that helps all the time. So if you think about it, what the average person might be using is for an email. It might take you half an hour, 45 minutes to get the email, and they can help organize your thoughts and maybe cut that down in half or more. We've used it in my office too. We had our first committee report that we had to produce. It's probably something that would normally take 4 weeks. It still took us a lot of time. It probably still took us a couple of weeks to go and work on it. So far we're seeing a massive reduction in time. But in very specific use cases, it will save even more time than that. And we hope more accurately.
Yeah. When in TxDOT also, I know they're running that pilot program down in Austin.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what were they able to share about, what about like a practical application in terms of how they respond?
Sure. So in this particular pilot project that they're doing down in the Austin area, they have web cameras that have been set up for a long time to go and look at traffic and traffic patterns. But by having artificial intelligence looking at those video screens effectively, they're able to see accidents happen in real time and provide help and assistance to those affected, in some cases before anyone else is even notified. And what they have shared with us is they've already seen in many cases a 5 to 10 minute reduction in traffic, right? Because it might have taken a while before for a tow truck to show up or for first responders to come up. But by speeding that up, they're able to speed up hopefully the conclusion of that accident. And I expect that that's something that's going to get rolled out. And that's, again, a good use. It gets people help faster. It helps clear up the traffic faster. Also be able to go and use AI to see where those accidents happen a lot quicker. And so that way they can maybe work their resources on solving traffic issues, but also transportation issues, and maybe help alleviate the scenes of accidents before they happen.
Yeah. Were any of the other agencies, anything jump out to you from some of the other agencies in terms of how they're using it right now? Yeah,
I mean, it's interesting because the agencies are using it for a lot more purposes than I originally intended. And let's take, for instance, they're using it in customer actions, right? Or they have constituents calling in asking for help, right? So they have chat bots that will go and provide assistance. Maybe that would be able to get people information that is more accessible too, right? A lot of languages, it can speak any language, it could go and provide exact information. But I think kind of interesting too is it is able to go and look at the sentiment of the conversation they're having with someone to see if maybe this is someone that needs additional help, maybe they're worried, maybe they're getting frustrated, and then that's when you can go and say, okay, we're going to put a human in this loop and we're going to go and get them extra help. So that's one of those things where maybe people fall through the crack otherwise when they're trying to get help, and AI can be used to sense that and then provide that help at the right time.
Is there a specific agency that's using that? Or
I think in this case it was Texas Workforce Commission that was using that kind of analysis to go and look at the sentiment of individuals, to go and help them. So I thought that was a pretty interesting, good use case of how we can help the people who need help the most.
Yeah. Your overall feeling after taking in all this information, but also having a good idea of where this technology is now and what a lot of the other states are doing, is Texas ahead of the curve or behind it?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. And, you know, obviously I'm biased, but I do think Texas is a leader when it comes to artificial intelligence. We have some of the greatest universities here. We have the greatest workforce. We have incredible opportunities to be the world leader on artificial intelligence and all the economic development that is around that. When it comes to regulating and policies, I think Texas is going to do it in a very smart, rational way. And what we're seeing is that no state really has done that, right? They've all gone out and tried to do something quickly, but this is something that's going to take a little bit of time. And for us in Texas, the year or so that we've had having public hearings, I think we've had 7, plus the Senate has had some as well. That input is going to be incredibly valuable for Texas to be able to regulate this, but still provide an incredible opportunity for artificial intelligence innovation.
Are you worried that in some ways, are you worried about racing the clock? In other words, like by the time you get your colleagues up to speed on where the technology is already raced ahead 3, 4, 5 steps. Can legislation keep up with this technology?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be challenging, but we've had other technologies in the past, and there's no rush for us to come up with laws. We can come up with policies and procedures and regulations that are adaptive as well, right? Again, the legislature meets every 2 years, right? So we're kind of used to, in Texas, being able to have things that, and laws and that are adaptive and will work in the interim while we're doing it. But the reality is there are things today that are problematic when it comes to artificial intelligence. We're seeing a massive increase in child sexual abuse material. We're seeing misinformation, disinformation. We're seeing the integrity of elections in some cases being at risk because of how artificial intelligence is manipulative. We're worried about social scoring, right? We want to make sure that as this data is being collected, that the data people have is secure and that private information rights are respected. Those are things we can work on today, for sure.
Yeah. When you look at like what some of the other states are doing, I know there's a pile of bills on Gavin Newsom's desk right now.
Right.
That I guess he's got a couple weeks now to figure out what
That's
he's
right.
going to do. Does Texas need a bill like California's to hold companies accountable for what their AI models do?
So I would say that in Texas we don't ever really kind of look at California in terms of what the right model should be. We're going to have our own version of how it can be done. But that being said, we do need guardrails in terms of how this tool is being used, just like we would with anything else here in the state. I mean, the things that we do today are going to help define what our children inherit, the world that we have. I mean, artificial intelligence is a buzzword today, but it's a real capital investment that a lot of companies are making, and we have to balance, again, innovation with the fact that there's definite corporate interest, and we want to make sure that rather than follow corporate interest, we're following human values. I think we're going to be able to do that in Texas. I think that some of the laws that other states have worked on are probably too heavy-handed in some ways, but then in some others, they seem to be missing the point, right? Which is, we want this to be useful to us. We want it to work for us. We don't want to work for it.
Let's talk about something that is sort of intrinsic to the Texas success story, which is jobs.
Yes.
You know, attracting these companies from all over the country to relocate to Texas and create and bring all these new jobs to the state. With the speed and the frequency that Texas attracts all these companies, does the state need to start putting stipulations in terms of not allowing these jobs to be taken over by artificial intelligence?
Sure. I mean, I think there's going to be some cases where individuals will not want those jobs to be taken, right? And almost all of us still believe today that there needs to be a human in the loop in a lot of these cases. There are very important important, critical things that humans are necessary for and will be for a very long time. And I'm thinking of things like medicine or financial regulations or accounting or lawyers, right? I mean, there's still a license process that we have here in Texas that we all agree is necessary, that the human be there. And so I think we should expect that to stay in place for a while. That being said, technology has always had disruptive effects on the economy. And yes, I totally think, and I think most people would agree, that this is going to get rid of some jobs. But at the same time, it's going to create new opportunities. And so part of what the state of Texas has to do, and those companies that are coming in, is make sure that our workforce can maintain the skill to be able to find those new jobs. In some cases, that's reskilling, and in others, it's upskilling. I think with a collaboration between universities and academia and community colleges, along with industry and along with the state, we'll find a way that as those jobs are disrupted, that we have better opportunities for people to be part of that workforce.
With that understanding, though, a lot of the, some of these companies are public companies, so they're, they're profit driven. They have to account, they have a certain accountability with their shareholders. Does Texas need to codify into law that to protect certain jobs from being just wiped away?
I don't think we'll have to do that. We already have protections. For instance, again, let's take a doctor, right? I mean, that's a person, that's a human that has to be there, and for a diagnosis or prescription to be done, they have to have a license, right? So we've already have those laws that protect those individuals or protects those very skilled professions. But I don't see us coming up with having to make a law to go and say, okay, you can't replace this person for that person. What we want to do is make people get the jobs they really want to do. I think everybody wants to have, when you're talking about the companies, they want them to be efficient. They don't want to get rid of people, right? I mean, they're run by people. Their shareholders are people. But what they do want is to at least be competitive with others. So whether it's a company in Texas, they're competing with companies in California, and both are competing with companies in Europe and so on. And so the goal will always be to make sure that humans are as productive and efficient as possible, and we need to make sure that the tools do that. When we've talked to companies, none of them are against regulating artificial intelligence. They just want to know, just like they do everywhere else, that those common sense rules are equal for everybody. Because nobody wants some companies to do stuff that they wouldn't want to do because they're unethical or what have you. So let's go and create those laws, rules, and that everyone can live by, and then that'll set up us being competitive in America just like we always have been.
Do you think that with a technology this powerful, do the guardrails have to be in place at the state level, or does this need to be a federal?
Sure. Well, I don't have much faith that the federal government is going to come up with something as comprehensive or as complicated as an artificial intelligence framework. We didn't see that they were able to do that with privacy or, quite frankly, with a lot of other things. But here's the reality is, if Texas were to go and create an AI framework, it would be one that other people would have to follow everywhere else as well, right? Just as if California were to go and do that. The European Union, for instance, has its AI Act, and companies today in America are having to decide if they want to keep doing business in Europe. So I think, based upon all of the conversations that I've had with other states and with committees that I've gone to, that artificial intelligence frameworks, ethics, regulatory, and so on, will be handled at the state level.
Okay. I know one of the things that the bill looks like it's going to pass too is California went in and said that their community colleges, there has to be a human being that the students have to have, because there was a lot of, some of the developmental math courses were almost just being taught, by some of the generative AI and some of the AI models. Do you see Do you see Texas going down a similar road to say there has to be a human being in these roles?
I don't know if we'll regulate that so much, but I would say we should, okay? Because if anyone who's played with some of these large language models know, it's not accurate all the time. And there's no real way to go and have someone do research on the side. So the technology is still too new to go and trust it entirely. I mean, I'll give you a quick example. I had asked it, okay, who are some famous leaders that have the same initials that I have, which are GC? And it comes out with Mikhail Gorbachev. I'm like, okay, that's not right. And it said, oh yeah, I'm sorry. I'm like, great. But a human wouldn't make that mistake either, right? So I think, not that we have to regulate it, but I think that if I were a student, I would not feel comfortable today being taught by something that still has so many mistakes in what it does.
Yeah. And tell me a little bit about what's going to happen at it's the October, right? That's
October
the
1st hearing,
October 1st.
yeah.
Okay. What's the purpose of that hearing and what's going to happen then?
Sure. So Speaker Dade Phelan created a House Select Committee called Artificial Intelligence Emerging Technologies. Is kind enough to make me the chair of that committee, and I have 4 other outstanding members in that committee. And we've been charged with looking at potential regulations and providing recommendations to the full legislature on artificial intelligence and other emerging technologies. And he has asked for specific topics like healthcare, education, transportation to be looked at and evaluated. We've already had one hearing on that particular charge, and so we're going to keep working on our charges. Again, with the intent of creating recommendations to the full House on potential legislation for the upcoming session. In this hearing, we're likely to have people who are experts in deepfake, but we're really going to delve a lot into the ethics and the philosophy of artificial intelligence. How is this going to affect humanity? We have at least one religious leader who's going to be with us, and we're going to have people who have spent a lot of time looking at the intersection of computers and human. How is what we're talking about today going to affect our kids and our grandkids and even their kids, right? Questions about people's jobs. Is it going to disrupt the jobs? Yes. But what does it mean entirely for how people will look for jobs and stay in those jobs? How will they be educated? And how will they treat one another? Those are kind of some of the topics that we're going to be discussing on October 1st.
Does this, in your mind, with the speed at which this technology is evolving, does this committee need to have a life beyond the end of this year?
Yeah, I do believe that this committee and the topics that it covers is something that the legislature is going to have to consider continuously. Okay, if you look at where technology is in Texas, a few years back it was something that was below finance and healthcare and oil and gas in the state. But I think today technology is one of the critical driving forces of this state's GDP. And as this technology is no longer just something people use to create documents, but it's actually involved in every single facet of our constituents' lives, it's going to be something that's part of the whole policy conversations that we continuously have.
How many, do you see actual legislation coming out of your committee's work?
Yeah, I do. I think in particular, well, first of all, I think there'll be probably over 100 artificial intelligence bills that are filed this year. In the US, there's over 500 bills that were filed 2 years ago. So I expect there'll be thousands and thousands of bills that are filed. But what this committee is focused on is a framework for private company use of artificial intelligence. But we also have a council that'll be focused on how our agencies will be using artificial intelligence, because it's not just about how private forces use AI, but also how the government is using it, which could be just as worrisome, right? We want to make sure that artificial intelligence is responsible, that it's fair, unbiased, and non-discriminatory, that it is transparent. We want to make sure that, for instance, you know how it came to the decisions that it came to, that there's a way to duplicate those, and just explainability. And then finally, we want to make sure that the tools that the government uses are secure. Is it conforming to our current rules on maintaining privacy? And is it making every effort possible to keep that data secure? This is all about data. AI is really about data. And what's happening is obviously not only have a lot of companies and the government collected a lot of data about everybody, but now they're going to need even more data. They need more data to be able to provide better outcomes, better training. And to do that, we need to make sure that that data is secure and that people's individual rights on privacy are held.
Do you think, one last question, do you think, as we get further down the line into this, do you think, can any superintendent in Texas be successful going forward without having a working knowledge of AI?
I think everyone needs a strong working knowledge of artificial intelligence. I think there's a thing that we constantly are saying, which is that AI isn't going to replace you, but a person who knows how to use AI will. And so I think at a bare minimum, as part of our just daily lives, we're going to have to do a better job knowing how to protect ourselves from cyber attacks. We're going to have to do a better job knowing what information we do and don't give, but we're all going to be more cognizant and aware of what artificial intelligence can do, what it can't do, what it can do right, and what it can do wrong.
What's your just overall assessment of how the superintendents in schools are they crawling right now?
Yeah, I think there are definitely some that are leaders in AI and AI thought, but I think most folks are still not sure how it can be used. Here's the thing, here's the challenge I think superintendents and principals are going to have, and even teachers, and it's been true with technology for a long time, is the kids know it better than they do, right? They're going to be using AI in ways you and I will never ever be able to come up with, or not quickly. And so when it comes to how are essays being written, how are tests given, the reality is today you can point an AI tool at your test and it can figure it out for you, right? So how are we going to, knowing that world, how are we going to change our curriculum? How are we going to change our proctoring? How are we going to change the way we teach to be in this world? And it's going to be a challenge, without a doubt. And we hope to be able to help them learn how to do that. But, kids are smart.